Bro, they won the Super Bowl. Did they watch the team?
Welcome to another edition of the SumerSports Show. Lindsay Rhodes and Sam Bruchhaus back with you with one preseason game now under our belt, the Hall of Fame game. Thought the Chargers' depth looked really good. I talked, Sam, about how they're a team that I think is so interesting this year because I think a lot hinges on some of those guys that they drafted, brought in the offseason. They kind of are like that bubble team for me. So I thought that was an interesting game in that sense. We have more games coming up this week. We've got a lot coming up on this show. We've got guests aplenty. We have our buddy Shawn Syed joining us, who has recently released a tape breakdown of Drake Maye from year one in the NFL. He watched every single drop back and has some takeaways, strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that. So looking forward to talking to him about that. And then we've got Brett Kollmann and Snyder from the Bootleg Football podcast, two of our favorites. And they're going to come on and help us discuss underrated players with the Madden ratings that just came out this week as a peg. So I think that'll be fun too. They're perfect people for that conversation, right?
I'm so excited about that conversation because, number one, the Madden ratings are actually used as an analytical tool. Like, there are teams, the Ravens have publicly said this, that view it as a long-standing 10, 20, 30-year rating of a team, at least in the consensus, or whether that's analytical or however they do it. And it's very rare, I can tell you as a data scientist, to have any scouting grades going back even 5 years, much less 20 years as the Madden ratings do. And so to really investigate these and see where the big differences are of how we view it is going to be really, really exciting to me.
I've got some players that I think are underrated. I've got one that I'm irate about that I don't know if you can even call him underrated, but I'm going to put him in this category because he's just way lower than he should be, and he's not even that low. But anyway, there's a very nebulous tease for that conversation coming up a little bit later on. First, though, big news out of Rams camp, which is that they got an extension done with Kyren Williams. I thought this was an interesting conversation for us because roster building is sort of, our bread and butter, and paying the running backs, not paying the running backs, paying Kyren specifically of all running backs becomes kind of an interesting conversation. So the fact that they were able to get this done, and I don't know that it was a for sure obvious thing that they were going to sign him to an extension personally, but they did. So it's a 3-year, $33 million deal. 23 guaranteed, 7th highest average per year at 11 million. So where that ranks in terms of the other running backs, you've got Saquon at the top, you've got CMC, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Kamara, Josh Jacobs. So he's being paid very well relative to his position. But I do think it's also worth noting that he's not even close to the same ballpark as Saquon, who's making almost twice as much at 20.6 per year. So you've got kind of a big gap between 1 and, in this case, 7. Taking Kyren's stats in mind from the last few years and understanding that what you want to do with an extension is pay for the production you think you're going to get moving forward and not reward production that you've already had. But you also, need to take care of certain people. Like, it's an environmental situation where you don't want to totally undercut people who are important to your team in terms of locker room stuff. I think that this is an interesting conversation. What do you think of the deal?
Yeah, I mean, let's lay out what they believe they're paying for. And that is someone who has been one of the best success rate running backs in the National Football League for the past couple of years. And he's been consistent in that. It was that way last year. It was that way the year prior. And especially in a Sean McVay system where you're running a lot of duo, you're running out a lot of man. The goal is to not take massive losses and keep the chains moving so that your players like Puka Nacua or your players like Matthew Stafford can make big plays. That's a perfect setup. And he also is a great innings eater as well. He can take a lot of carries. He's the true running back one. And so that is what they are paying for. The questions, Lindsay, are a lot more contract-based because you dive into these contracts, and I think this may be the first reverse, like deflation of an APY for a contract, because the way I'm looking at this contract is 2 years, 22 million guaranteed, or 23 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
That's fourth. There's only 3 more players that are making more guaranteed, all on 2-year contracts, all offensive player of the years. Derrick Henry, CMC, Saquon. I don't know if I view Kyren in that realm. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the 2-year cash, 3-year cash, signing bonus, etc., all comes out as it's leaked out, because the APY that you just laid out is a lot different than the guarantees. And when we're talking about running backs, we did the sticky stat series. It's immensely variable what may happen on a year-to-year basis. And moreover, we have seen that with the Rams in the year they made the Super Bowl with Todd Gurley. So that is why this is so fascinating, Lindsay.
Well, it's yeah, I agree. So many of those points. You pointed out the success rate. One of the problems with pointing to the success rate, even though it is a stat that's attached to him, is that it's so clearly a team and environmental stat,
100%.
right? Like, so O-line blocking, Stafford being in the backfield, the wide receivers being as good as they are, and just taking defensive, like, affecting the box. Like, there's so much here that really it's hard to dial down, like, is this specific running back the one who is making this happen, or is the offense making this happen and we're plugging this guy in? And then they just drafted a guy, right? So, I mean, there's so many layers to this for me. I'm like, one, are we like hitting pause on the Jarquez Hunter excitement and saying like maybe he won't cut into his snaps this year and maybe this is going to be Kyren for at least the next couple of years because they must think so because they're paying him as if it's going to be him for a couple of years. But then also it was day 3, so I realized that there's that. But like they were real excited to get Jarquez Hunter. Is that depth then? Is that, like I'm just trying to figure out all of this, because if you did draft Jarquez Hunter with the notion that he could step in, maybe it gave you some leverage in terms of negotiations. Like, we got another guy, like we don't have to pay you. But do they think that they have to have Kyren and that there is drop off if Kyren leaves the field? There's this almost brings up more questions than it does answers for me.
100%. And particularly since the expectation, just statistically, and we talked a lot about Terry McLaurin last week and how the stats didn't necessarily add up to what it was reported that he wants. Now it's reported that he doesn't necessarily want that, but he wants other things. There's all kinds of elements here. Here it's on paper. It's signed, sealed, delivered. The terms, at least as we know, the $33 million, 3 years, $22 million guaranteed, $23 million guaranteed. And the real knock of why he wouldn't be a top 5 or a top 10 running back is the EPA per play last year. And that is the true descriptive stat when it comes to the running game. That's the one that everyone grades their running game on. And he just was not immensely efficient last year. Now, what does that mean? It means he fumbled a lot. Was he better the year prior when he almost made an all-pro team? Yes. But will that fumbling get better? Do defenders, as a former defender, smell blood in the water? You start to get more punches. You start to get more chances taken when a guy knows that you will fumble? Yes. And so when you are hurting your team via those massive EPA drop-offs due to fumbles, that does bring up about a question of, can you get back to that EPA space? And that has nothing to do with the aging curve of running backs, him going into his 4th year, him being heavily utilized at Notre Dame, him being heavily utilized as a Los Angeles Ram. And so there's just so many questions about this that you almost kind of wanted to see it play out a little bit more if you're coming from a purely analytical perspective.
He was 30th last year amongst running backs in yards after contact per attempt. He was tied for 25th in rushing yards over expected per attempt at 0. He was 12th in terms of runs of 10 yards or more. This one's an interesting one for me because he is not really used in the passing game, right? Like, people who look at this from a fantasy context understand Kyren has been very good in fantasy. That's because his rush share is off the charts, right? He just eats up every single carry for them. One guy only. It's Kyren. He has a 70% rush share from last year. He had 316 of their 450 rush attempts. So that's significantly higher than everybody else. And that's why he gets to the point where he does in terms of yards, right? So he's 7th in rushing yards last year, 3rd in attempts. Like, he just gets the ball a ton. they don't throw the ball to him. He's 40th in receiving yards, 31st in running back targets. So like you've got some stats here where it feels very propped up by volume as opposed to talent. And yet you also have to have enough talent to take advantage of the opportunities so that you're not just a total disaster and that they want to replace you. This is a front office that I've said over and over again, I have so much faith in. So they know him better than anyone else. And them signing him to this deal means that they think, I would imagine, that he can continue to produce at least for a couple more years at the rate that we've seen him produce for the last few years. And they think that that will be enough. But I just think it's fascinating. There is worthy of discussion here too, is that we're talking about paying him this high dollar amount for running backs. It's still like nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's worth talking about. So you're going to make him the 7th highest paid running back. Not nothing for all of us. Like I would, yes, please, I would love $1 million per year. But in terms of NFL contracts, it's not that much money. So I wonder if, that's kind of where we're looking at it. Like if you go to 11 per year and you look at wide receivers, you're looking at, let's see, he went just over Josh Palmer and De'Ami Brown. Like we're in a Jacoby Myers tier. Darius Slayton is making more money than him. I mean, so if you think about it that way and you go, okay, we're going to lean on him for a couple more years. We think that he's got, there's enough tread left. Then really, like, what are we talking about here?
I think you're correct in that, in the pure monetary sense. But the reason why it is that way is because you can replace him.
Yeah. And have someone who you might be able to replace him with. So, yes.
Exactly. So, I mean, like, that's the real question is like, if you wouldn't have paid him this year and he drops down to 50% of carries or drops down to 45% of carries, then you don't have to worry about anything for the next 2 years. You don't have to worry about paying the 4th highest non-rookie guarantee, which is like, that's locked and loaded cash coming out of the Kroenke's pocketbook there. And so it really brings about, should a running back ever get an extension? And I mean, like really the only super successful extensions. Now, obviously you have to give it to Christian McCaffrey because he wins the Offensive Player of the Year and is one of the best running back seasons ever.
And when he hits, needle is moved.
Exactly.
Like needle is 100% moved. That's what we're talking about here, right? Is this guy good enough that he individually
100%.
by himself moves the needle?
100%. And so when you go back and look at it in recent years, really the only extension that has, quote, worked out, and again, like we're super caveating, super hindsight, has been Alvin Kamara, who has had 1,000-yard from scrimmage seasons and been the focal point of the offense for at least 12 to 15 games a year, basically since he signed that extension. Derrick Henry was eventually let go. I mean, I was
just going to say, Derrick, actually, I was just about to say with Kamara, my follow-up was going to be, do you think it's because of the receiving value?
100%.
Right? But then Derrick is exactly the opposite because Derrick's not a guy who, like, Derrick is a Kyren style guy. Totally different, I understand. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, he's a guy who's going to get a ton of carries and just eat up the rush share, and he has just failed to drop off in ways that feel alienish.
I think the rule is, don't give a running back an extension unless they are a major part of your passing game. Christian McCaffrey, probably going to be Jahmyr Gibbs here shortly. Alvin Kamara, or you have a 6'5", 240-pound running back. I mean, like, I think that's going to be the rule because, like, in all, clarity, Saquon missed a lot of games for the Giants. Like, they did not get their money's worth for him, despite him, having some really great years. They did not win they made the playoffs, obviously, but like that draft pick in terms of surplus value probably wasn't the best draft pick in hindsight. And it's like difficult to say all these things because running backs are really fun and descriptively they impact the game a lot. You just cannot trust long-term. And the Rams have been burned by this before. That is the true kind of item here, is that they have been burned by this before and they're making this decision. Clearly, they think that because of the way the offense is set up, because where their team is with a very youthful defense and some stars on offense, that they can make this move and it's not going to hurt them.
That's a good point. That's a good point because they do have some of the most important guys on defense that are already on rookie deals and they're set there for a few years. So maybe they have the luxury of overpaying, if we want to call it that, for a running back. And by the way, I understand, like, this is a roster building conversation. This is not, people who are not having conversations like this frequently are going to be like, what are you talking about? It's $11 million and he's a name we know. And he, and these poor running backs and how they're just getting screwed financially. That's a separate conversation.
Us analysts, man. Lindsay, we did the sticky stats series, and I know people across the league listen to it. So I don't want any blame for that, even though we did publicize all of the statistics.
Do you think that the timing of this has anything to do with the recent news about Stafford's back? And Stafford hasn't been out on the field for training camp, and the back is enough of an issue still for a 37-year-old quarterback that we're talking about maintenance, which is just like not what you want in the preseason, even though everything's like, oh yeah, if there was a game today. I saw Schefter saying, my understanding is if there was a game today, Stafford would be on the field. I'm like, I mean, I get that makes us feel better. That's all kind of not the point too, though. Like, we're talking about a guy who has had some issues physically in the last few years, and now we're starting the season with things that we have to be concerned about. And we're maintaining him already, right? Like, this is not exactly how we want to start. So do you think that there's anything about like, okay, fine, okay, the running game is going to be maybe more important even than, and let's just get this done, or even redirect conversation potentially?
I think there may be identification of a window, especially given that they have a super-powered head coach in Sean McVay, and they have some really talented players on the team. And maybe you just want to lock it in for these 2 years. That being said, Jimmy Garoppolo is their backup. We've seen him do well with Kyle Shanahan. We've seen him really not do well with Josh McDaniels. And we'll talk a little bit about what Shawn Syed has seen from Josh McDaniels and how it affects Drake Maye in a little bit. But if it's easy to say from not inside of the building and not having to win games and not having to talk to an owner every single day, but this would seem like a move that if your franchise aging quarterback goes out, that you would not want to make. So I do think maybe there is an element of urgency and window. I just wonder how much it's tied to Stafford himself and more on Puka Nacua, who is on a rookie contract, Jared Verse, who's on a rookie contract, Braden Fisk, who's on a rookie contract. And those are the three positions where you have to pay up certified because we can quantify those pretty well. So I think that's kind of more of the thought process is creating a 2-year window there where you can work in and out with those guys and then decide what to do after that.
Jimmy Garoppolo, who you brought up there, we're going to be talking about Madden ratings a little bit later on. In looking for people who are underrated, found his name very far down the list. And I know that, we talked to Jordan Rodriguez at Combine when they were having conversations with Matthew Stafford, and she told us straight face, absolutely, like, not trying to put one over on us, that the Rams actually very much like Jimmy Garoppolo and that they were okay going to him if it didn't work out with Stafford. Now, obviously, they ended up signing this deal with Stafford. And so, but like, we have been told that they very much like Jimmy Garoppolo and are okay if they have to turn to him. He has a 67 Madden rating. He is rated after Tyler Shuck, who is just just nothing but, bad news coming out of Saints camp with regards to his name, which I'm not suggesting we should make more of that than it is. Like, it's still so early as a rookie, whatever. But rookies usually are rated very, very low in Madden relative to our expectations for them potentially. I mean, he's after Desmond Ridder, who has a 68.
Yeah.
We're after Aiden O'Connell at 68. Spencer Rattler's a 69. We're way up there. Like, Mac Jones is a 69. Jimmy Garoppolo? What?
Yeah, I can't wait to get in these discussions with Brett Nietzsche because there's a lot of things that go into this. I'm sure Madden does an excellent job each year. And again, these are a relatively trusted kind of consensus rating.
I'm not saying that they're wrong, by the way, either. I'm just saying that the contrast between Jimmy Garoppolo's Madden rating.
Yeah, who has been number one in EPA in his career multiple times, or at least around it. So,
and also what we're hearing people like Les Snead and Sean McVay think of his skill set. So it's like, Madden looks at him this way, and then they're looking at him this way. And then, I hope we don't have to find out, right, whether who's right, because in a perfect world, I want to see the best version of the Rams on the field, and then whatever happens, happens. One last question about the Rams before we move on. And it's related to the Stafford back situation. They've got 2 wide receivers who are getting drafted very early in fantasy drafts. Puka is an early second round, kind of on the turn guy. And then Devontae is going at the end of the 3rd round, roughly, from an ADP standpoint. I would not be surprised if their average draft positions don't start to go down just a teeny bit in the next week if we don't have some good news or see Stafford back on the field. Do you think, if you were on the clock right now in fantasy, are you more or less likely to pass over on them where they're going because of the Stafford news?
I would be overjoyed to snap Puka Nacua up if he starts dropping.
Yeah,
because the two kind of grail stats, and when you really start asking people around the league and you start listening to our Sticky Stats series, we're pretty good at figuring out which wide receivers are good. And the way we do that is, how good are they per route run, whether that's yards or EPA. They tell a little bit different story, but Puka is really good at that and has always been really good at that. And how much target share are they getting? And he is one of the top in the league at that. And I can imagine, especially if the quarterback goes out, maybe that changes Davante Adams, but he is earning target share. And then obviously on the flip side of that, Davante Adams switched teams twice. He switched teams during the middle of the season last year and still was able to get good target share as well. So I'd be happy to snap them up, particularly Davante Adams, if he starts falling in like the mid rounds or the late rounds. Like, I will take that all day.
Lots of other camp news that we could discuss, but we've got a lot of great stuff planned for you today. So camp reaction will have to wait, and maybe we'll have some tape to break down with games coming up this week when we return next week. And we know a guy who breaks down tape like it's nobody's business. Shawn in the chat. Shawn, by the way, Shawn Syed is the least likely person to be called Shawn by anybody. And yet,
look, Lindsay, I'm just happy that we have film to talk about. I am happy we can go through the Hall of Fame game film. We're so close to regular season games. It doesn't matter what I'm called as long as the film is being uploaded.
Shawn Syed schemes on the social media with us now to kick off his in-season tape breakdowns. It's technically not an in-season tape breakdown, right? Because the season hasn't started, and it is of last season that we are currently breaking down. You sort of launched this whole thing, and you're going to be doing tape breakdowns like this regularly with a look at Drake Maye and all of his dropbacks from last year. You watched them all. You put together a just under 17-minute video breaking down strengths, things that he needs to work on, all that kind of stuff. What was your primary takeaway after watching all of this Drake tape?
If you're a Patriots fan, if you're in the Patriots organization, I just think you have to feel really good about that pick. I think you have to feel really good about what Maye put together in his rookie season, even where all the numbers are not the most encouraging numbers that you'll ever see. I think Drake Maye can do kind of anything on a football field. Now, look, there are tons of things that he needs to work on. There is a world where he is not able to be consistently accurate in the short area of the field. There's a world where he's not able to just totally clean up his decision-making, and that really just hampers his progress through the next few seasons. But his ability to push the ball down the field, his ability to just create things out of nothing in the pocket, that is what you need in the modern NFL. So was it the greatest rookie season ever? No, I don't want to pretend that. I watched a lot of snaps that, had me wondering what is going on here, what's going on with the infrastructure, what's going on with the players, what's going on with Maye's decisions. But the takeaway at the end of all of it, I feel comfortable and confident with where Drake Maye was in his rookie season. Things to work on, to be absolutely sure, but also I think a really bright future ahead of him.
Yeah, so Shawn, my major takeaway, and you hammered on this with some beautiful clips, and again, we encourage everyone to go watch this. It's on YouTube, it's on Twitter. It's a lovely 16-minute video. You can crank it out if you're, cooking dinner or something like that, and you can learn a little bit more about Drake Maye. But what I took away from it was that improv creativity, that's his main strength right now, and that's where the eye matches the AI. In terms of Drake Maye, because he was pretty successful in the multitude of pressure situations last year. What did you kind of see from that creativity? And do you think he's going to be forced to do that again this year?
look, sometimes Drake Maye plays quarterback like I play Madden, where you're running around and trying to create something. And for me, I like to think I'm okay at Madden. For Maye, there's the first clip. Literally, I wanted to show it right away because it's against the Dolphins. He's stiff-arming a defensive end. He's throwing the ball all the way down the field over the defense. There's so many situations where you're creating something out of absolutely nothing. Sam, at the same time, there's situations where he really looks like a crash test dummy, and I absolutely hate having to see that. Obviously, they had some just issues staying on the field overall. So I think finding the balance between really creativity and, unfortunately, chaos, I think is going to be important for him. I do think there were some times where, look, the offensive line, it was not a good offensive line. I don't really know what else to say about it. They had, amongst their tackles, they had the 61st and 94th out of 99 overall qualifiers in terms of SumerSports for pass blocking. So a tough situation where he was pressured often. Still, I think sometimes where he's looking down a little bit, he wants to take off right away. I had an example in there where it's like, hey, you're getting to your next part of your read, and he just goes. The problem is when he does that against the Jets, it's a huge rushing touchdown, and he's able to run by a linebacker. So I'm hoping that the infrastructure being better, where they're at least trying. They're bringing in different offensive linemen. They're going to have different starters there. They're bringing in different receivers, even if they're not exactly the receivers that they had hoped for in free agency. So you hope that that's able to lift it up a little bit as well. It's optimistic. There's a chance it doesn't all work out. I'm hopeful for it. I would be really, really kind of bummed out if we look at it in a few seasons and say, oh, the Patriots were never able to get Drake Maye in a situation where the things were kind of clicking around him. And now we're just talking about a what-if quarterback, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm curious about your thoughts about, I mean, you mentioned the offensive line. I'm curious about the pass catchers, too. Having gone through all of that tape of him, how much you think he was limited by the pieces that he had to work with, and then how much you think that might change based on the pieces that they've added.
I think that obviously, separating offensive line and receivers, you don't have to. You can just say, hey, they both kind of held the Patriots back overall. The receivers last year, I think to be kind, it left something to be desired. Certainly, I think of all of them, there was only one that was above like the 50th percentile in our route running score. That's agnostic to if you're being targeted or not. So it's really looking at, like, are you getting open kind of in any sort of way? And I had a whole entire like folder of clips. There was like at least 10 where it's a receiver falling down on a route, or a receiver, it looks like they're going to catch the ball, but the ball hits off their hands and it goes into the defender's hands, or just these rough situations. And that didn't stop Drake Maye from pushing the ball downfield in isolation situations. So you're thinking, okay, we bring in Steph Diggs, who his numbers looked good enough last year, I think, in terms of our advanced AI metrics. You're hoping that he's able to get back to health. You're hoping that Kyle Williams comes in as a rookie at the same time. Rookie receiver expectations, what are they? So I do like Pop Douglas there. I did like their tight end room and what they were able to produce there. I'm trying to be, I guess, cautiously optimistic because I'm in on Drake Maye. I don't want to say that I'm not, because I kept seeing things that it's like, wow, this is pretty rare for a quarterback. He's not afraid of the middle of the field. He can push the ball with anticipation down the field. He can run by you. He can throw over you. I keep saying that because it's so important, but I'm not going to come on here and say, hey, I think this is going to be like a top 5 receiver room in the league by any means.
So obviously, like you said, it may look a little bit different. There may be some changes. There's obviously some personnel changes. Josh McDaniels is now the offense coordinator of this team. It's going to look different than it was with Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo and even Kyle Orton back when they had that little Broncos run at the beginning of the season years ago. Is this going to be the Drake Maye offense where it's Drake Maye has the keys to the car, or do you think the Belichickian way of kind of playing your role is going to be enforced a little bit more upon him, so that he's not that kind of crash test dummy that we saw last year?
I think it's got to be a balance, right? Because they're hoping that they can grow together. Because Maye, again, he is not a finished product at all. There's a lot of things that he needs to keep on polishing. McDaniels has had professional offenses for a long time, so you hope that he's able to just continue to increase the competency. There was some creative stuff last year from the offense that I think goes like unremarked upon. So I don't think like the play design was necessarily like the worst that I've ever seen. I think McDaniels, you're hoping that, I hate to say it because it's not handcuffing Maye necessarily, but you're hoping for under center, heavy play action, those easy routes. I think that if you can give Maye more of those just easy button type plays where we're going to have those crossing routes where, unfortunately, against the Texans, one time you sail it over a receiver's head, it ends up in an interception. But there are other times through the season where you're able to complete that pass, get people running after the catch. So I think you're hoping that you blend that in, Sam. I know you would love to see Drake Maye run the ball like 20 times a game.
I would love to
I think
see it.
will season in a little bit of like a very little bit at least of that design run game. Maybe when it's in a 3rd and short type situation. Maybe when it's, just in that goal line type area where he can be a real positive there. At the same time, you don't want to put him into harm's way too much. So it's going to be really interesting because if the offensive line doesn't mesh, like none of what we're talking about, I think really matters, unfortunately.
Shawn Syed, go check out the tape breakdown everywhere on social media at Syed Schemes, SYED, and then also at SumerSports on the YouTube page. Go check that out there. Thank you so much, Shawn.
Thanks, guys.
Drake Maye, by the way, QB 19 in the Madden ratings with a 78 overall, which is a perfect segue to our next segment with 2 guests who now look perplexed. I don't understand the look on Brett Kollmann's face. Very excited. Let me finish introducing before we get to the perplexed look on his face. That is Brett Kollmann and EJ Snyder, both parts of the Bootleg Football podcast. I'm so excited that we were able to get both of you guys here with us today. And we're going to be talking about, to finish the thought, I'm new with this, Madden ratings as a peg for underrated players in the league, because let's be real, they don't get this right all the time. We do. We know who the good players are. Brett, let's go back to the perplexed look. Drake Maye, QB 19, 78 overall. Was that a reaction to that or something else?
Yeah, 78 is weird to me because, like, I understand, the numbers weren't crazy. I think he had less than 2,300 yards. He had 15 touchdowns, 10 picks, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Shitty wide receivers and offensive line too.
Yeah, right? Like, the only offensive line that gave up more pressure than them last year was Seattle, which, like, if you're in Seattle's neighborhood, that tells you how bad that offensive line was, because there was, like, 3 offensive lines at the very bottom of the league, and it was the Seahawks, it was the Patriots, and oddly enough, it was the Vikings post-Darisaw injury. So he was dealing with pressure at that high of a rate, higher than almost anybody else. He was a rookie. He had a coaching staff that didn't know what it was doing. Incredibly toxic situation. His defense had one of the worst pass rushes in the entire NFL, so they were giving up points at a high clip. He was throwing to like Pop Douglas and Kayshon Boutte as his top 2 receivers, and he still looked pretty good. So as far as I'm concerned, he had the worst possible situation a rookie quarterback could have.
I want that to be the title of the Summer Series episode that is yet to come out.
The worst possible situation.
Yeah.
Well, Patriots fans, I think have been saying that all offseason. Is it's a miracle that they were the 4th overall pick, not the 1st overall pick.
Yeah.
Although some of them probably wanted the 1st overall pick.
In all of my fantasy leagues last year, drafted either Javon Baker or Jalen Polk, because I was like, one of these guys has to be good, right? They just have to be. So late round, just took turns wasting a pick on those 2 guys. So yeah, not great.
And now they might not even make the team.
Exactly.
Because does Mike Vrabel strike you as a coach who would keep around guys that he didn't draft that aren't as good?
Jalen Polk, by the way, is 74 in the Madden ratings. Why do I have that note written down? I don't know. I don't even remember. There was context, I think.
What a pull.
With regards to guys who were ranked below him. I'll go back and I'll find out why I wrote that note down. That's what I do. I just scribble random things here.
Well, it's
Did you have the
interesting.
Efton Chisholm rating handy at all? Or?
90 what? It's interesting though, because it's if Jalen Polk is a 74, and this is a player who Brett just said is potentially going to get cut, how the basis of these ratings are really interesting. So EJ, I'm interested in your thought. 99 Jamar Chase. In my head, 99 Jamar Chase should be the best wide receiver of all time. Or should it just be the best wide receiver in the league at the time? What are your thoughts?
Oh, I have lots of thoughts. And my first thought is I don't spend a lot of time on Madden ratings. So I had to dive in. When y'all called and said,
thank
hey,
you for coming.
Yeah, exactly. Hi. No, you're like, we're going to talk about underrated players in the league. And I was like, that's awesome. And you're like, based on Madden ratings. And I was like, that's not so awesome. Okay, cool. No, it's a good framework, but I mean, we're talking about ratings for a video game, and, Madden wants folks to talk about these ratings. If they, just sort of went chalk all the time, it wouldn't be very much fun, just like it wouldn't be if we did. So diving in and seeing some of the relative ratings, I do have questions for their developers about, so why did you do this? Because you can talk about situation like we just did with Drake Maye. You can talk about potential like we're going to with a bunch of rookies. But, Madden ratings as a, true to life rating for whether or not a football player is good is not exactly what we do on Bootleg. So it's kind of fun to dip my toe into another world and go, oh, what does Madden say about the players I really like? Oh, they say that? Now I could be angry.
For the record, though, never looked at a Madden rating in my life. Like, you'll be shocked to know that I haven't spent that much time playing Madden in my history. So I was unfamiliar with even the breakdowns of what these were. But I think it'll be interesting to kind of see almost like as a market value, right? Like,
Correct.
Is this how people see these guys? And I think that there are some guys that are even big names that you're like, well, that's way off based on, what we think in our communities. I did go back and find out why I wrote down Jalen Polk, by the way, though. He has the same rating as Jalen McMillan.
No.
Oh,
No.
Yeah.
Unacceptable.
Why are we doing this? What are we
We're not.
that means both of them are 3 points higher than Cam Ward. So Jalen
So
Polk,
we should have taken Jalen Polk number 1 in the draft?
apparently,
Okay.
Tennessee Titans legend Jalen Polk.
You guys.
Well, he probably won't go to Tennessee till he's
Oh.
like 32 because that's their style, but still.
Okay, point
My
of this,
God.
Greg Dortch, by the way, 73. I mean, we could do this all day. Anyway, this is not the point, is not to, rip apart the Madden ratings. It's more to use them as a like, hey, we like these guys more than the market might because we think that they should be ranked higher. EJ, who was the first name that popped to you as like, he's too low. You need to have him higher.
Yeah, even though I don't talk about Madden ratings a lot, Cam Ward's name had come up a couple of weeks ago when these dropped, and folks were, I think, rightly outraged. He's a 72 in Madden. And, in and of itself, in a vacuum with a rookie quarterback, I understand why Madden would underrate a rookie quarterback. Given some of the other ratings that have been given to rookie quarterbacks over the years, 72 for Cam Ward seems ludicrously low for him because he is going to produce for you as a rookie. He's a proven playmaker. He has done that at every stop. He is not a one-year wonder from college. He is also a very experienced player. Lots of downs in college. We had this whole discussion with Bo Nix last year about experience versus, raw potential. Cam Ward is an experienced playmaker at multiple stops, and he gives you something with his legs, which he's going to need as a rookie starter. All rookie starters occasionally have to do things when the play breaks down, and Cam Ward is one of the best at that. So 72 for me feels criminally low as a starting point. It just feels like, well, we didn't talk about you a lot because you played at Washington State and then you went to the Titans. And we don't care about that either. So we're going to make you a 72 to just tick their fans off. Other than that, doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
1 point higher than noted Cowboys backup Joe Milton.
Yeah.
No.
So, like, based on that, yeah. So I was trying to defend the Madden ratings here. I was gonna go up and be Mr. Data guy and be, we don't know which quarterbacks are supposed to be good, but I that's also another thing that I picked up on. And like, if we view the consensus big board as the market in the draft, Joe Milton was not selected first, just in case anyone
Those
anyone
are the
thought
two
that
categories
happened.
that you could be in.
Yeah,
By
yeah.
the way, you either were selected first or
Big-
you were not.
Or not.
Yeah, big data point right there for Stopsky to throw up. Joe Milton not selected first, Cam Ward selected first. But then I went back and looked at all the people on Arif Hassan, our friend Arif's consensus big board going back to 2015, how those players were rated, and here are the closest players to what Cam Ward is rated. Tua Tagovailoa, 73, Justin Herbert, 70, Carson Wentz, 72. So all kind of, guys. I think Herbert was the lowest consensus big board guy, like 15. Tua was the highest at 5. You look at other guys, as you mentioned, EJ, Jaden Daniels, 85, CJ Stroud, 80, Anthony Richardson, 74, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance in that 72 to 74 range. So it's a little bit, in terms of the consensus big board, on par, but I just don't know where the decision to make him lower than all those guys really came, given, like you said, EJ, people really liked his prospect profile. So I'm actually on your side here. I think he's undervalued a little bit as well.
I wonder if part of it is because these ratings changed during the season. I wonder if they're building in like a buffer to give themselves like space
For
to move
sure.
him up, right?
Don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah, so then like it could be, by the time we get to December, it's like, oh, he started as a 72 and all of a sudden he's an 81. It's like, look how much growth there's been. It's like, or you were just low.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think actually that's really smart because you're thinking they're a business and they want to continue to find ways to get themselves in the news and get Madden rated and we hook, line, sinker, all of us, right? Like we bit for it. But it's much better and it's a better story if somebody's rising in the Madden rankings because they're playing well, then like, oh crap, we got that wrong. He sucks. Like that's not something we're gonna go write a headline about. Brett, who jumped out to you?
I would say Kobie Turner would be the first one for me. And Kobie's been, I would say, respected for the last couple of years. Like even in his rookie year, like he got some defensive rookie of the year buzz. Maybe not as much as he should have because like he was an even better player than Jalen Carter was when they both came out in the same DT class. But like people noticed that he had a phenomenal rookie year and then he carried it over into the next year and people continued to notice that Kobie Turner was kind of the straw that stirs the drink on that defense. And yes, Verse and Fisk hit the scene well because the Rams just for whatever reason can't miss on taking the alignment, but Kobie was still like the guy that made everything work because not only is he a great pass rusher, but he's an elite run defender as well. To me, he's one of the, at minimum, 10 best DTs, especially 10 best 3 techniques in the NFL. There's not a whole lot of guys that I would take ahead of him, especially at his price point. So if we're looking at production per dollar at interior defensive line, like how many guys would you rather have right now than Kobie Turner? Couldn't be more than 2 or 3.
Speaking of price per dollar, we had some other big Rams news today that we talked about right out of the gate. Kyren, are we good with the extension? As a quick aside.
Oh, EJ loves Kyren. He's always loved Kyren. So any dollar he gets is good with him.
Yeah, you should ask Brett what he thought of Kyren coming out and what I thought of Kyren coming out. And that'll kind of tell you whether or not we're cool with the extension or not.
EJ loves short kings. Like he was also a big Bucky Irving guy. So like anytime a running back is, under 6 foot and under
Good.
220.
The word you're looking for is good. Anytime a running back is good.
Versatile.
By the way, I don't know what Bucky Irving's Madden rating is, but it's probably not.
Hold please. 87. Way too low. Way too low. I was thinking. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I was thinking about having that be one of the ones that I wanted to talk about, but I thought it was just a little bit like he's still high enough that you're like, meh, I'm sort of splitting hairs here, but let me filter really quickly.
He's got to be RB what,
names.
5, 6 then?
No, I think he's a little bit lower, right? So he's, he's not that far down. Kenneth Walker's ahead of him. James Cook is ahead of him. Those stood out as
asking EJ to pick between Kenneth Walker and Bucky Irving, like that's it's like asking him to pick between his kids. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it was Saquon, Derrick Henry, Gibbs, CMC, Bijan, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Walker, and Bucky Irving. And then Nick Chubb.
Houston Texans legend, Nick Chubb to you.
Nick Chubb, who, obviously we all kind of love his talents when he's healthy prior to having not been healthy, but that might be the biggest disparity from if you are looking at these to drive what is fantasy football value this season, he might be the biggest one because you can get him very late in fantasy drafts. And if Madden is right about where he should be rated this year, which I'm not sure if they are, but then Nick Chubb, value pick. Sam, who jumped out to you?
So I approached this and I was really shocked by this. And I think the positions that we can't really quantify super well typically will have these types of spreads because there is an element of opinion. So I'm going to the linebacker position, one that I hold very dearly to my heart. And I think Edge Cooper is just wildly underrated. His Madden rating is 79. He's the 34th best linebacker.
Oh,
and moreover, I picked up on this early that apparently this is like a thing because in the executives poll put out by Jeremy Fowler at ESPN, I believe, he didn't receive a single vote to be a top 10 linebacker. And I was like, Did y'all watch the games last year? He was like, there were games where he was the whole Packers defense. So let's put some numbers to it. He was in the top 10 of our coverage SumerScore grades for players with more than 200 snaps. Here's some of the names that are with him on the top 10. Okereke, Henley, Quincy Williams, Robert Spillane, Demario Davis, Zach Bond. Run stuff, also top 10. Here's some of those names. Chenal, Jordan Brooks, Jack Campbell, Tranquil, Zach Bond. Like, these are all excellent linebackers. He has pass rushing upside. As a former linebacker, I loved watching him all year. And like, this guy, I think, could be an all-pro this year. Much less, a 79 kind of, starting linebacker for any given team. I was floored by this.
I wonder if Brett needs to go make himself a drink from one of the many bottles behind you, Brett, based on your reaction to that one.
It's just absurd. Like, honestly, like, it's almost unconscionable. Like, it's one thing, okay, if he starts out as a rookie, like 79 or whatever the number is, but you can't watch 17 games last year and not think that he's at least in the mid 80s. Like, at least get me that. As far as being a true 3-down linebacker, and EJ and I, we actually interviewed him at the Shrine Bowl when he was coming out, and, we got to have him walk us through some of his own tape from college. And like, you can see that he has this innate ability, like even if it's like not like drawing it up on the whiteboard, but he has this innate ability to just recognize space and his timing, his vision. Like he plays linebacker in this instinctual kind of way that you really can't coach. And he even does some stuff that's like not even like the technique I would say that most linebacker coaches would want you to do, but because he's so athletic and he's so instinctive, he kind of gets away with it. And it reminds me of like a 3 technique that's constantly, backdooring a reach block to get a TFL to get TFLs an outside zone. Like, no defensive line coach is going to tell you to do that, but if you're good at it and you get away with it, they're going to let you do it. And Edge Cooper is that kind of linebacker where, like, and Sam, this, like when you're reading Cloudy and Clear, sometimes he'll do a read where you're like, whoa, I don't know but he still makes the play. And you're like, oh, he's just that good where he can do stuff that linebacker coaches wouldn't explicitly tell you to do. So I don't know, man, the instincts, the athleticism, I don't understand how he's not like 86, 87 right now.
And Sam, what did you say his overall ranking was among inside linebackers?
34.
Okay, I want to see the list. That's what I really want to see is like, give me from 15 to 30. And how many of those am I just going to draw a red line through and go, no, not better. No.
Yeah, who's 33? That's what I want to know.
What I was trying to figure out is whether this was somehow tied a little bit more to his draft position. Because, like, okay, he missed a couple games last year, but the reason why I think he's so good is because I watched the games that he missed. And the Packers couldn't figure it out.
Yep.
So, like, especially when you watched how they operated without him. And like you said, Brett, those, what we used to call hero or a-hole plays, like, he was the hero. Like, if there's X factors in this game, and like, that's an X factor. Like, he is an X factor player. He's like one of the best linebackers in the league. As far as I'm concerned, I was a little shocked by this.
Also, as a former linebacker yourself, how long did it take you to learn how to do like a proper hook drop? Because when he was in college, he would just kind of like sit at his spot at 7 yards deep. They didn't really like have him get depth in his drops. All of a sudden he shows up to Green Bay and like he's getting like 12, 15 yards deep at his hook drops. He's sitting in the window. Like he's feeling the receiver without even seeing him, and he's flipping and he's getting lane. I'm like, oh, so he just turned into Fred Warner in 6 months. That's cool. Like, but how long did it take you to learn how to do that? Because he did it pretty darn quick.
I mean, it's such a mental position because you are really one of the only players who is truly a coverage player and a run defense player on every down, other than like third and long, basically. And so, I mean, I am definitely not Edge Cooper. I'm sitting here talking to y'all right now. I'm not playing ball on Sundays, but like you said, there's a real learning curve in college, much less in the pros, when you're having to like legitimately cover in the NFC North, Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot and all these other great players that they're going to match you up against.
Do you think that there's something to this, though, Sam, like we talked about in our Sticky Stat series, that like linebacker play is hard to evaluate, right? Like, it's hard to find stats that specifically tell the story of this player's talent versus this player's environment. And that's partially why they're not paid, because it's tough to peg down. That might be what's happening here.
Yeah, I think that's an outstanding point. And I do wonder, particularly like if you're considering, this is a little nerdy, but considering a simulation game, like because they do have to do so much, if you make all these players really good, maybe they just take over the game. And in the reality of football right now, putting together an all-pro list for linebacker is like pretty hard. Like some people could like Deion Henley as an all-pro. Some people could like Zaire Franklin. People love Fred Warner, and Bobby Wagner made an all-pro team last year. And I thought, he was a little step slow, even though he did have a good year. So it is difficult to evaluate. And right now there's not a ton of super top tier linebackers as well, but there are a lot of good ones, one of which I think Edge Cooper is.
One of the positions that I think is not particularly tough to evaluate, and one that we regularly do for fantasy purposes, casuals have their favorites, all of the above, is the wide receiver position. And so that is why this feels like low-hanging fruit, and you guys gave these great names, and this one's going to be my basic one that feels like you're splitting hairs here because he's still ranked really high. But I literally looked at this, and I know that people were talking about A.J. Brown being wide receiver 7, and he's way too low. And then I found Puka Nacua at wide receiver 13, and I was like, I have to talk about this. How? Literally, how do you come up with the list where Puka ends up as wide receiver 13 as an 88, lower than, wait for it, Devontae Adams?
He's not even the highest on his own team?
Not even the highest on his own team. Like, what are we doing? And how is this not the headline that everyone latched onto? We got to A.J. Brown at wide receiver 7? Like, that's fine. You can think of these a couple... Puka Nacua is sitting right there at wide receiver 13. Like, what are we doing? I can't find any kind of statistical argument for him being wide receiver 13. Like, I can't even start to fathom what the argument was for, like, no, down more. Like, I don't get it. We have him in our SumerScore, 99th percentile receiving SumerScore, ranked 2nd out of 149 wide receivers, 98th percentile route running SumerScore, ranked 4th out of 149 wide receivers. He was number 1 in yards per route run. He was number 3 in target share on a team where we obviously did kind of still spread the ball around to other people. Like, he's so good that he still demanded the ball at that rate. He was number 1 in targets per route run. Like, it's just, I don't understand. I'm wondering if anybody can make an argument for me about, like, this being potentially right, because I'm not seeing it.
EJ, you had a stat when we did the Rams episode about his yards per route run. What was it?
I can look it up, probably put it in the description because I don't have it up at the moment. But the good news is, Lindsay, we found a title for your podcast, which is EJ's Priors Confirmed, or Madden Hates EJ, one of the two, because Puka was a guy I called out this summer before he was drafted because I got to see him at Washington, and the ability was always there. And I mean high-level ability. It was injuries, and the staff really just soured on him not being on the field. He went on to his next stop. Again, showed out against top-level corners. Again, got injured. And it was like, man, if this guy could just stay healthy. So in June, on our summer series, as we do every summer, the year Puka was coming out, I said I was a football genie and I had 3 wishes. One of my wishes would be Puka Nacua just stays healthy and we see what happens. Because if he does that, you're going to remember his name. And, a lot of people have called back to that, but it was always that way. It's not some prescient thing. It's just keep him on the field and he can dominate. He's got great size. He's a hell of a blocker. You talked about the route running and the target share and how he converts on the targets he does catch. There isn't a justification for him being 13th other than, well, and this is draft status is sticky, right? Well, he wasn't drafted that high. He wasn't a first round receiver. Oh, he was injured. Well, since he's gotten to the pros, he's basically wiped all that away. But if you're holding on to those priors, which were incorrect, or wait and see, we'll say at the time, then you can come up and say this rating is okay.
EJ, I found it. So, Lindsay, you brought up the yards per route run. He's number 1, right?
Yeah.
He is almost a full yard per route ahead of Justin Jefferson and more than a yard per route ahead of Jamar Chase. So I got nothing. I got nothing.
We're all in agreement here.
And look, like everyone's in agreement that Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are in every conversation about the best wide receivers in the NFL, right? Like that's where it starts, and then you can add people to that conversation, but they're always in the conversation. I think that the only way that people are a little bit behind on Puka is that I think Puka is in that conversation. And I don't think that people are putting him in that conversation yet. They're putting him in that like next tier of like, yeah, also good, maybe, you know? And I just think that the tier is bigger this year than it was last year. And I think people are just hesitant to expand the tier. They just want it to be those two. And that's it.
Again, when you have ratings and you get to a certain number, there are certain players where there is a floor. Like if we're having a discussion about wide receivers and you get to, at the lowest, wide receiver 8, let's say, and you haven't mentioned Puka's name, I'm going to be like, hold up, I'll stop you there. Where do you put Puka? And it's the same with other players in other positions. Defensive tackle, right? You get to about 5 and you're like, where are you going to put this guy? Because you haven't mentioned his name yet. And when we have those discussions, whether it's about quarterback or wide receiver or defenders, or to your point, Sam, inside linebacker, which is way murkier because of the sort of two-way, really almost four-way nature of the position. And you get to a certain point and you haven't mentioned a guy's name who's playing great, you know, the ball knower's choice. You're like, okay, great. What number is this guy going to be? Just skip to that part, because then I'm going to tell you you're wrong if it's below, you know, a certain level.
I wonder if it's too about sharing in that offense. Like it has been until now, him and Cooper Kupp, right? And I think last year it was way more him than Cooper Kupp than a lot of people realized, because Cooper Kupp still had some big blow up games. And so people thought that Cooper Kupp was still Cooper Kupp more than maybe he actually was. But I think that it's maybe that split that kind of devalues him in people's minds. Like Devontae Smith is also ahead of him in these rankings. And by the way, ratings, I suppose. He's also a great wide receiver. Like, so again, that's why I say this is splitting hairs, but it's not where Puka belongs.
We don't have that with Jamar Chase. T. Higgins was very good for a lot of years, and we're not pulling him down and saying, oh, well, we're not going to talk about Jamar Chase in the top 3 because Jamar went top 5. That's right.
Yep.
Lindekoff winner, was so good. He sat out his last year in college and still went top 5. Like, plus he's making $40 million a year. Like, it's just all perception is reality when it comes to this kind of stuff, right?
Draft status is sticky, and it's sticky good. That's why we see, you know, quarterbacks who were picked in the first round get recycled even when they've bombed out at multiple stops. And it's also why we see things like this in the reverse.
Brett, did you have a wide receiver that you thought was too low?
I honestly have a couple, because Nico Collins is like just barely ahead of Puka, and I would put Nico in that same kind of discussion of like, he shouldn't be, like, his number shouldn't start with an 8, but it does.
Yeah.
I look at, I mean, it's such a loaded position group, but even if I go all the way down to like BTJ at 84, and like 84 sounds like an acceptable number because like, okay, it's a young player, they're ascending. But if you watch the Jags last year and like their outright refusal to feed BTJ the ball in the first half of the game, or at least in the first quarter of the game, you know, they would just like remember he existed after halftime every single week, and he still ended up with the production that he did. Like, he was one of the most dynamic weapons at any position on any team in the entire league. And if you put BTJ on a team that I think gets more national attention, because he is in Jacksonville, and then like, we love Jacksonville, we love Jags fans, but like, they don't get the same number of primetime games, right? But if like the Bills traded up last year and got BTJ and he was playing in Buffalo in primetime 7 times and putting up like the exact same stat line overall, he probably wouldn't be 84 because of that. Again, perception is reality. I think this year with Liam Cohen coming over and basically declaring like, no, everything runs through him, we're going to force feed him the ball, even though we just drafted Travis Hunter, it's still going to be the BTJ show. I would say he's going to go from 84 into the 90s by like Halloween, because like, I don't think people are prepared for the kind of year that he's about to have.
And I don't want to frame this conversation in this manner, so I'm hesitant to even say any of these names, but some of the names that are ahead of him are just weird and
Baffling.
feels like a popularity contest. Like, hey, we know that name, put him high, you know? Guys,
I'll say one. I'll say one.
okay, go.
So you don't have to. You know what DK Metcalf's contested catch percentage was on vertical balls last year? It was like 22%.
Thank you.
Starts with a
And
2.
he is 85.
But he's a
and
good
BTJ 's
contested
84.
catch guy, right? Because he's big bodied and he wins at the point.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah,
narratives are
I
just.
think they actually weigh you before you get on the field, and that's what determines if you get the
Make
ball
you
or
make you
not.
run a 100-yard dash.
It's ridiculous. And like, there's some guys ahead of him that are like, okay, I'll see the argument. Like Garrett Wilson, I think he's earned it. I would say Chris Olave, when he's healthy, he's earned it. Malik Neighbors, like, sure, you could sell me on that as well. But Brandon Ayuk coming off a major knee injury where he's still not right and he's rated higher. Well, we don't know what he's going to move like. Stephon Diggs coming off a major knee injury at his age. We don't know what he's going to move like. You know, like Chris Godwin coming off a major injury at his age. We don't know what he's going to move like. Like, how, if you ask 32 GMs right now, would you rather have BTJ on your team? Take the salary out of it. Would you rather have BTJ, the player on your team, or any of those guys right now at their age with their injury situations? Who would they want? 32 would say Brian Thomas Jr. So
How about
what are
this
you doing?
one?
Huh.
Same rating. Same. So they are same. And I expect you to talk about them in the same manner. Brian Thomas Jr. or Jerry Jeudy.
Oh, God. It's not even a question to me. It's not even a question. And like Jerry Jeudy had a really nice year. He really did. It was probably not even probably. It was the best year of his career. Obviously, was ultra productive once Jameis got in there and did Jameis things. It was like, I'm locked in on you. You're getting the ball every play. But as far as like who I want to be my wide receiver one on my team right now, it is not even a discussion. And EJ, you are a big BTJ guy. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah, and it reminds me very much of like, the Jerry Jeudy thing is like Jarvis Landry, right? Jarvis Landry was a very good receiver of a type. He played a long time in the NFL, but if you asked most GMs, hey, if you're looking for your all-everything wide receiver, if you're looking for an explosive threat, because explosive plays, we all know, change the face of the offensive game for a team. And if you're putting Jerry Jeudy up, yes, he had a rebound year and it was very nice. Best year of his career by far. BTJ, 1 year in the league, better year than Jerry Jeudy's ever had by far as a rookie. And the arrow's still pointing up. As Brett said, we haven't scratched the ceiling yet. So what are we doing here? Like, what is it based on, to your point, Lindsay? Why do these numbers land where they land? Because the way we'd all look at it, we'd go, well, that's absurd. But Madden does it because it works for them for a reason. I'd love to know the reason.
Well,
I wonder too if they need to spread the talent around for parity just within the game. Like,
It's
is there
yeah.
actual game stuff that's coming into play here? And they're like, hello, morons. Like, we can't have one shitty team. Like, you should play them and beat them every time.
Right. We'll sell no games to Browns fans if they're all 75s. Like, that's not
I
going
mean,
to
it works in CFB though. Like, everybody loves taking control of, the Akron program and winning 5 natties in a row. Like,
Well,
I'll take over Carolina.
I think the thing that's most interesting, though, which in the context of Lindsay's comment as well, like you have to sell games, but like this is also kind of a team with an arrow pointing up, despite not necessarily making a ton of crazy acquisitions, other than obviously the trade and draft pick of Travis Hunter, who allegedly, according to Liam Cohen, is going to play 80% of the offensive snaps. We'll see how that turns out. But like BTJ, I think, is one of the players this year who could go from we're talking about him and we're gushing about him, and me and Lindsay have talked about how he could potentially be a wide receiver in that vein. But then by next year, everyone could know his name. Or next, like then he could get a massive extension in year 3. And so that's kind of why, like, I was looking deep into these Madden ratings to find the guys who, may be the guys who get a big contract. And so the one I went with was Moro Ojomo, the defensive lineman from the Philadelphia Eagles, who is a 68.
Holy hell.
He is a
Do
68.
numbers go that low?
He played like 400 plus snaps last year.
Bro, they won the
In the
Super
National
Bowl. Did
Football
they
League.
watch the team?
Yo, so it's like I was just trying to find these arrow guys who could all of a sudden like be, for the most part, a household name. Most interesting note about this: Ty Robinson is above him.
Hey, no Ty Robinson slander. No
They're
Ty
talking
Robinson.
like rookie Ty Robinson.
Rookie Ty Robinson is out of him.
He's DT 165 according to your note.
That is
Moro Ojomo.
correct.
I'm like, you think there are 100 and back to your linebacker discussion. There are flavors on the defensive line, lots of them. Even if you're going from 5 tech to 0, there are multiple, at least probably 3 and probably 4 designations that you could split guys into. And there are a lot of guys that play defensive line in the league. I'll give you that. I don't believe there's 165 guys better than a guy that took 400 snaps on the eventual Super Bowl champions roster, who has a very specific and defined role. It's not flashy, but it is very important. And there is a flash element to Madden ratings for sure. Guys that do the dirty work aren't going to get high ratings, but having a rating in the 60s and being DT 165 for a guy that was that valuable to Super Bowl champions and has been a good player in his role since he was drafted seems bananas.
That just doesn't make any sense, knowing what we know about the Eagles' depth and being like, so he's going to play this much. He's going to continue to earn this job, but you're going to rate him as somebody who is essentially a replacement level player when they have the replacements. Like, they're telling us that's not true. And of all the teams to tell us, we should listen to Howie.
Right.
They were comfortable letting Milton walk because they had Moro.
100%.
That's a great
Like,
one.
you think they couldn't
100%.
figure out a way to pay for everybody? Like, they could still do it if they really wanted to. Like, they just pay out option bonuses over and over and over again. Like, they could have figured it out if they thought they were going to be screwed without him. But they had Moro.
I mean, he's a guy that we could be potentially talking about. And again, now we're talking about potential. Like, he was one of the best pass rush players at that position for us in our Sumer frame scores, which we really, really liked. We've seen a big correlation year to year through that. And like you said, Brett, he's taking the role of a player who just absolutely cashed out. And they were okay with that. They had no qualms about it. And so I think that's someone that I'm really looking for that arrow up on, weeks 1, 2, 3, to where all of a sudden, our friend Shawn Syed, not a Birds fan, but we'll be probably talking about him because he loves Vic Fangio.
Also, no disrespect to this player, they have Jerry Tillery at 71 compared to Moro at 68. So
half better.
Stopsky, we're gonna have to crop EJ's eyes on that one.
oh, here's one for you, EJ. You know who has the same rating as Moro Ojomo?
I'm
Zach
still
Pickens.
Oh.
There's the thumbnail. Let's go.
Okay, cool. Guess what? I'll take Moro Ojomo for Zach Pickens straight up. Who says yes? And the answer is nobody says yes to that. That's an illustration of, hey, did you just forget? Did you just get done and go, oh shoot, we didn't rank Moro Ojomo? 65 or 68 or whatever it is. Like,
They did a quick SEO search and saw there were no mentions and that nobody would care except for us.
Right. Let's hide this guy. I get it.
Are they just trying to like artificially deflate the Eagles like team rating?
Now
Is that it?
I
we're
do
getting
wonder
into the
about that.
conspiracy, yeah, because like
What?
AJ Brown too low, Devontae Smith maybe slightly too high, but like you look at their defensive line, I thought that Jalen Carter was a little low. I thought that a bunch of these guys are a little low. So
I'm going in a rabbit hole. I gotta see what Hurts is. Let's get extra toxic with the
this has became the
discourse.
Protect the Philadelphia Eagles podcast all of a sudden, which I
At
did
all
not
costs.
expect.
Okay, well they got Hurts as QB7 at 86.
Okay.
That one I actually think
All
is
right.
like fair, but they do have him just or I guess tied with Justin Herbert. So I'd probably nudge Justin up just a wee little bit.
Okay, I was gonna say you could go in what was gonna come next out of your mouth. Like that could have gone either way, right?
Is that crazy to say that Justin Herbert at 86 should have been maybe my pick for underrated? Because that feels low.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not even a disrespect to Jalen Hurts. It's more so just I think Justin Herbert's too low.
Fingers crossed we find out that that's true this year with the pass catchers. I feel like it's like a full cut paste situation every year. They're always like a bubble team, the Chargers, and we're gonna figure out if they have pass catchers this year that can really like, put it all the or O-line or whatever the story is. It's just like constantly pointing fingers in different directions. But they're so interesting to me in terms of teams and camp that I want to see, not in the Hall of Fame game, though for depth purposes, it looks like they're good. I want to see them actually in the preseason and some of these younger guys used because I feel like a lot of their draft picks have the potential to maybe play big roles this year. I just don't know which ones.
I mean, also as we add more games to the schedule year after year, because we're at 17 now, we're going to go to 18. I mean, you guys are in the analytics company, this, as the sample size increases, I would say the predictability also increases, right? Because there's less events that can rapidly change our projections, or more events, which means less, you know what I mean? You're the math people, you get it. But I'll say this, what that also means is the teams that are deepest, that can withstand injuries the most as your surface area, your exposure to injury becomes greater, those teams are going to be the ones that make it further. Yep. Which is why I also think it's like a miracle that Detroit made it as far as they did, despite having 21 guys on IR, because like lesser programs with less depth would have crumbled before Thanksgiving.
It's also why I was asked after that game last week about teams with bad quarterback situations, maybe looking into Trey Lance. And I was like, the Chargers are the last team that should trade away an actually competent quarterback as a backup. Like we've seen people need to go in for Herbert. He has a history of leaving for a couple of games a year with different injuries. So knock on wood, that doesn't happen this year. But I would, based on what we saw in the Hall of Fame, small sample size in preseason and against 2s or 3s or whatever, but like he looked pretty good. And I would be thrilled if I were the Chargers to say, okay, good. Check, like if something happens, we have depth at that position that might not be the worst in the world.
And the average NFL team starts 2.5 quarterbacks a year. Obviously it's made up by some starting 1 and some starting 5, but like if we're talking about the average in the league, like you need to have a backup that you can trust for a few games, because like the guys aren't getting any healthier with a 17, 18 game season.
EJ, I feel like one of the themes of this podcast has been your disdain for Madden and also some of these ratings. Like Sam called out, some of your facial expressions have been golden. So who are we going to make a I'm disgusted by this rating face next?
I don't hate Madden. Let's get that out there. Madden serves its purpose. And if I have any axe to grind with Madden, it's that 10 years ago they killed franchise. And that's what I like to play as a team
me
builder.
too.
So, other than that, I think Madden's great as a talking point, and it's a tremendous franchise that keeps the sport that we all love in the public eye in a very different way than we all could. So I don't hate Madden. What I do in the football world is very different than coming up with Madden rankings. So we'll just leave that as it is. But Travon Walker of the Edge from Jacksonville is a guy that I want to talk about, because if we're going Goldilocks here, and we had the too hot as Cam Ward, and we had the it's close but I don't agree with it, and then we have the it's really really close will be my sort of splitting hairs one as the last. Travon Walker's in the middle for me, and he's edge 47. And we need to talk about mechanics for a little bit, because the player directly ahead of him in those rankings is Pete Werner, who by my count plays a very different position. TJ Edwards is also ranked ahead of him. Again, not in the same category, but if you look at some of the people, he's a 78. And if you look at some of the folks above him, again, I think the story about Travon Walker when he was the number 1 overall pick as an underdeveloped pass rusher coming out of college with sort of immeasurable physical traits was, oh, well, we'll see if he's good. And his first year, he wasn't. He was still learning. Since then, he's had 10 sacks a year. 10 sack a year guys in the league are extremely rare. I was going to look up how many there are every year over the last 3 seasons. It's not as many as people think. It's kind of like, oh, that guy will be a 10-year starter. 10-year starters in the league are few and far between. 10 sack guys in the modern game, if you get 8 or 9 sacks, you're incredibly valuable. We talk about you in a very bright light. Travon Walker's had 10 both of the last 2 years. He's only a 78 in this game. So I reached out to my ringer, Brandon Thorne, who does offensive line work, but also great defensive line work. And he's got something called Sack Score. And one of my favorite things that Brandon does is talk about high quality sacks as opposed to cleanup sacks or unblocked sacks, sacks that are just forced into you late in the down, ones that you really earned. And Travon has 5 of those 10 over the last 2 years are high quality sacks compared to Josh Hines-Allen, 7 over the last 2 years. So similar. Again, I think we think of Josh Hines-Allen as a premier pass rusher, and everybody goes, oh yeah, and Travon Walker's on that team too. But when you look at some of the guys above him, again, the 78 ranking doesn't seem to kind of justify his play against the run and also his ability to get sacks, cleanup or not, year over year, which can be fickle, but he's been steady for 2 out of the 3 years in his career, and they're the most recent years. So not even having him as an 80 seems like we might be talking about other people's potential more than his actual production as a football player on the field.
Are we just doing like a Jags are underrated show here?
It's kind of
sounds
that
like
way.
Yeah.
whatever their over under is as a team. I'm like, ooh, I don't know. They seem very disrespected.
In a
I mean,
not great division either.
right.
Yeah.
And
With a
we like
bad Texans offensive line, really.
oh
Hey.
Uh-oh.
knife.
Ariate
Sam.
Urgery is going to deliver us from evil this year. Just watch.
Another team that I think might fit into the category of underrated a little bit in terms of the sum of their parts as opposed to the individual parts. And honestly, even as we're talking about here, individual parts maybe being underrated. And I can't believe I'm going to say this because I don't know how strongly I feel about this. But Cardinals a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, and yet I say that as somebody who's not like running to like hit the over on the Cardinals. Like, I think it's entirely possible it will continue to just be what it has been. But this is all to get to a specific individual player. And I'm actually curious to gauge your reactions to what I'm about to say, because I'm not sure if you're going to agree or not. And I'm really interested to find out. So I'm going to go with Garrett Williams. And for casual football fans out there, that is not Garrett Wilson. I did not mispronounce. There is a player in the league that you maybe have not heard of named Garrett Williams, who is a cornerback for Arizona, who has a rating of 80, which ranks 41st at cornerback and is, in my opinion, just way too low. And I think that the reason is probably twofold. I think you've got one, not a lot of people watched the Cardinals last year. You know the fantasy players, but the team didn't really give us much reason to watch. Maybe that will change this year. Another reason is that he played primarily inside. We're talking about a nickel corner. And nickel corners don't typically get that much love in the best cornerback conversation, and I certainly understand the logic there, but he just played so well last year in the ways that he was asked to play. Our SumerScore metrics, which we've mentioned several times, but just to explain, track frame-by-frame output by a player and assign a score to every play, and notably is player agnostic, unlike some other scoring grading metrics, meaning it does not care who the player is or know who the player is that's being evaluated. So big names don't matter. It's purely objective. This metric had him ranked number 1 in coverage score amongst cornerbacks. So even separating him from outside corners, understanding that the two are different, he was the best nickel corner in coverage. They're talking now at Cardinals camp about finding ways to keep him on the field more often, probably because of his versatility, playing outside with Will Johnson. We're going to see more of that this year. I just think he's a young guy who is not a household name, who is ascending and who isn't captured entirely well by the Madden rating, admittedly with room for growth, particularly against the run game. But I think that this is an example, kind of like we talked about with linebacker. There's just different kinds. EJ, you've said several times, there's different flavors at this position. Even on the line, there's different positions. This is clearly different position within his position. And so I'm curious about your thoughts about how you should rate someone like that against the guys on the outside.
Brett, you want to let me take this one?
Hey, man, you've been a Garrett truther since before he even hit the
Oh,
NFL.
yay! You're not like Lindsay's dumb. Good.
No, Lindsay's very smart. So every week at the end of our division summaries, we do a patron-only episode where we pick our award winners. And for the NFC West, which we've already done this year, Defensive Player of the Year for the NFC West, I said Jared Verse because I think that's wise, but I made sure in that episode to give a shout out to one Garrett Williams. Coverage snaps per target, 7.2, fifth in the league.
Yep.
Coverage snaps per reception, 12, third in the league. NFL passer rating against 73.5, sixth in the league. Garrett played immensely well in the desert, and the tree fell there and it made no sound. Nobody heard about it, and a lot of people, to your point, Lindsay, don't even know his name. Now, I'm a Syracuse fan, so I understand, not a problem. But again, lots of guys from Syracuse don't work out. I don't blow their horn, and this is a guy we need to get out there in the NFL consciousness because he's playing exceptional football for, again, a team, and I'm not going to say a smaller market, but a team that generally gets paid less attention to in the NFL universe. And it's, everybody's like, Buda Baker. Buda's great. I love Buda. An NFL classic about our Cardinals legend, right? Garrett Williams is next in the desert, and people need to know about it.
By the way, though, your summer series, which we've alluded to quite a bit, so good, you guys. So good. I mean, it's very, people who are familiar with what you guys do, it's very on brand for what you do, very detailed, very you're going to get a really thorough picture of what the team looks like. You kicked it off with the Raiders, and I immediately had to go on a full live tweeting exercise because it's so good. And it has been for all of the different teams. The most recent one prior to the Jets episode dropping is The Art of the Ethical Tank, and it's about the Saints. But I love your titles, by the way, too. The titles are money.
They get slowly more unhinged as the series goes on. Because we're in this for 2 straight months. We're posting episodes 5 times a day for 2 months, or 5 times a week for 2 months. And I could speak for EJ on this. There comes a point about 4 or 5 weeks into it where your brain is mush and you're like, I don't even know what to call this thing. And I think one of the ones that I had last year was 92 minutes straight of us just gassing up the Titans or something like that. I was like, this title sucks, but it somehow worked. So it's whatever, I'll take it.
I mean, 92 minutes of you gassing up the Titans as a title would make me click on it because I would have a lot of questions about what was going to be in that show.
You are not in the minority. There were a lot of people that watched that episode, but yeah, I can vouch that about 3/4 of the way through, he'll pitch me a title and say, does this work? Is this too much? And I'm like, nah, send it.
And it's never too much. Right?
I think our title for the Bengals episode was these people are giving me an aneurysm. It's I don't know, man. What?
That was just the defensive tape?
It was very close to factually correct. But
yeah, we had to cut out a lot of that episode that was oh, this probably couldn't be watched by children on YouTube, so we're going to trim this a little bit.
Speaking of which, we didn't, the Bengals, we didn't get to a third player for everybody for time purposes, which is fine, but Trey Hendrickson was on someone's list. Whose list was he on?
That's me. That's my sort of splitting hairs. And Trey Hendrickson, again, rated at 92. And you might say, hey, that's okay. Typically it would be. And again, I think Trey Hendrickson was the Lone Ranger on the Bengals defense. And everybody was like, yeah, we know he's good and he held everything up, but the defense sucked. So we're going to let that sort of wash over onto our opinion. And Brandon Thorne and I went round and round about this one too, because he's got total sack score. And since 2020, Myles Garrett is 72.5 and Trey is at 62.75. That's the total since 2020. However, last year in both efficiency and overall sack score, Trey had the highest score he's ever recorded in both for any player since 2020. So 92 is good, it's not good enough. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that puts Trey at edge 7, but he should probably be, again, 3 or 4. If you're getting to talk about the best pass rushers in the NFL in any way that you want to, again, I'll take any metric you really want to bring up, and you get to 5 and you haven't mentioned Trey, we're done. I'm stopping you and saying, hey, he's not 5. So where are you going to put him? You need to displace one of these other guys. So again, 92 sounds great on the surface. He's on the wrong side of 30. I understand, but he was great and he had no help. So back to your thing about Aaron Rodgers, Lindsay, is he a victim or is he the cause? He was clearly the cause of the good things he did, and nothing he did contributed to being bad.
His floor in our pass rushing Sumer score since 2020 was 10. So since 2020, he has been no worse than the 10th best pass rusher. In the last 3 years, that has been 6 every year. And so I tend to agree. When it comes to pass rushing, he's the man. And he is the only man on that entire defense.
I was looking it up, and not to belabor the point, but some teams, it just feels like they get more respect than others in this game. They got Alex Highsmith at 88. So I'm like, how did you get it so correct on Alex Highsmith and so wrong on Moro Ojomo? Like, you can't be elite ball knowers and also completely ignore the Eagles at the same time. I don't know. They're in the same state. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and I looked up Alex Highsmith with respect to Travon Walker as well, because, Travon Walker, you have it, and you're like, oh, well, he's getting, cleanup sacks. Well, that's been the argument for Alex Highsmith for years, and he's making tens of millions of dollars. So it just shows you the kind of difference in evaluation, I suppose.
Back to the Bengals. Speaking of, Travon Walker's a 78. Shamar Stewart, Bengals rookie of note.
No, I'm not ready.
77.
No.
Oh, come on.
This has been fun. Thank you very much for joining us. I have
bye.
to go. Like, what are we doing? What?
Yeah,
Oh.
a 10-sack guy for the last 2 years versus a rookie who's held out of camp and, again, didn't come in with the cleanest pass rushing profile. It's kind of funny because Travon Walker and Shamar Stewart viewed similarly as athletes who had not put it all together coming out of college, but one of them's actually put it together in the league. So that's worth, let me see here, 1 total overall point.
I will say this. Madden is grading or rating based on like physical skills and not production. So that does seem to benefit.
I get it,
right,
but
like
then
shouldn't and agility.
Walker then, like, if we're doing physical skills, shouldn't Walker then be like a 96? Like,
only when he was number 1. See, again, 2 categories.
For sure.
Number 1 overall pick and not. Anyway.
Now I need to look up what his rating was as a rookie, because has he just not moved in 3 years then?
That is
as the number 1 overall pick, I have to assume he would have come in as like a high 70s, right? So it's like, has he just not moved? I'll have to look that up.
Or maybe they Cam Warded him his rookie year.
Maybe he started out as 68.
Again, then they're not rating on physical skills because Travon Walker's RAS was stratospheric.
Travon Walker has moved up since Madden NFL 23. 2 points.
Oh, come on.
One
dude.
point for each year he had 10 sacks. Isn't that the scale?
EJ Snyder, Brett Kollmann, you guys are the absolute best. Thank you so much for doing this with us. Against your will, EJ, duly noted. You can find their work in the rest of the summer series. He's not laughing.
We had a lot of fun. This is against my will. Whenever you, Sam and Lindsay, say, hey, come to a podcast with me, it's not against my will.
The Bootleg Football Podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, and also on YouTube. You can find them on the Twitter at Brett Kollmann, Kollman, and Football EJ. You guys are the best. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Liz.
Lindsay, it's so fun to talk about Madden ratings and these things that are technically for kids with people who just absolutely love football.
It's not technically for kids.
Oh, I'm okay. It's rated E for everyone, I suppose. But like, you step in with people who are like, I mean, we're talking about Moro Ojomo, Travon Walker, Garrett Williams, like these guys who are making a great living playing football, and I love football. And your average 12-year-old may not care about a slot corner, but it's just funny to see the massive differences between what we are talking about and what we are loving, and what someone just throwing on the sticks in the dorm room may be interested in.
Totally. I'm still caught up on the kids game thing a little bit, just because it is such a complicated game, right? Of all of the games, the video games that are out there, Madden it's so layered. I think it's actually a really great tool for kids to
Definitely.
learn football, right? And actually become get them on the path to being sickos like us.
100%. And I learned cover 3 that way and what it was supposed to look like. Brett mentioned hook drops. I knew what a hook drop was because I played an absolute ton of college football back in my day. So building more football lovers.
I played none of it. Maybe what I need to do is start playing Madden, and then I'll be putting out tape breakdowns like Shawn Syed, before you know it.
I'd love that. That would be
Watch
awesome.
out,
I'd be
Shawn.
tuned in.
What that might look like. Oh boy. Speaking of which, it feels like a million years ago that Shawn was on this show. Thank you so much to him for coming on. I love this, having like multiple guests on a show. I think it's going to be really fun this season, having different people within the company and out of the company, having a variety of different conversations within a show. So that's something that you can look forward to in the months ahead. And next week, maybe we will focus on, with a week of preseason games under our belt, one for every team. Maybe we can start having the rookie conversation. I think it would be interesting at this point in training camp, and with a little bit of game action by which to gauge kind of where they stand, to start thinking about which of these rookies that we talked about so much in the build up to the draft and then post draft is actually going to have a role that we need to talk about this year. So we'll look forward to that coming up next week. Thank you so much for listening this week. Thank you to Brett and to EJ and to Shawn for coming on. For Sam, I'm Lindsay, and this has been the SumerSports Show.